i-netradio.com. i-netradio.com. Dobry den, I Dobropa Jalabat. This is Springtime in Moscow with your host, James Tuthill, and I'm Stephen Stimson. We've got some Russian with a little American, and we're serious with a little humor. So, Jim, what is happening in the world today?
Thank you, Steve, for the beautiful words. I'm Jim Tuthill, and this is Springtime in Moscow. We are here on i-netradio.com. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our streamer and our server and our player are all now in Deerfield Beach, Florida. Our studios in Jupiter, Florida. And tonight, I'm broadcasting from New Jersey, from Jacksonville, Florida, and Miami, Florida. And we have a special edition of Springtime in Moscow, and we are going to ask the question, are there a lot of things that are wrong with the United States of America? And to help me answer that question tonight, I have Jake Danishevsky and I have Mike Morton. How are you two fellas doing tonight?
Great.
Good.
Thank you for being on. It's a really sincerely gorgeous evening in Miami. Biscayne Bay is calm. There's only a little bit of wind. It's been beautiful down here today. So we're lucky. And I guess it's been a little hot in the Northeast at times. So who knows? Anyway, August is on the way. Okay. An article has been posted, let's say. I don't know if it's been written, but it's been posted. And they pose a question. Are things wrong with the United States? And they seem to give a definitive answer. And the answer seems to be yes. And the number one thing that is wrong with the United States, according to this article, is racism. Okay? And as you know, recently we had the Trayvon Martin case, and some issues about racism came out. President Obama, I think, a week ago Friday, gave a sort of an extemporaneous speech about race issues from the press room at the White House. There has been a lot of talk about people of color and racism and what's going on the various talk shows. A guy in Congress from Iowa said that some of the Spanish immigrants had very large calves from carrying many, many pounds, I guess, of marijuana or cocaine or something into the United States, which kind of got people going. And then, of course, we had the bankruptcy of Detroit, Michigan. And George Will said that it was not a monetary bankruptcy, but it was a moral bankruptcy of Black America. And he said there was a breakdown of the family in Black America, and a breakdown of the education system in Black America, in terms of Detroit, Michigan, I shouldn't say America. And he was pretty tough on the Black community in Detroit. So I will say one thing. This issue has given talk show hosts on the right, the left, and in the middle lots of things to talk about. And when you're a talk show host, you need things to talk about. So, Jake, I'm going to ask you the question. Is racism a huge problem here in the United States? Is it the number one thing that is wrong with the United States of America?
Well, first of all, thank you for having the show.
Oh, my pleasure.
You sound very excited today. This is good.
Yes.
We're going to have a great show.
Yes, we are.
Well, racism in America. Yes, of course, it's a problem, but it's also almost like a gift, like a shiny penny to the opportunists who make it a bigger issue. For example, you brought up, I thought we're not going to mention the president, just talk about the issues, but since you mentioned him, I'm going to bring it up. His speech was very unpresidential. A president is trying to unite a nation. He said he's going to be a grand uniter. And here he says that it could have been me 35 years ago. What kind of president speaks like that? Not to mention that this guy was given every opportunity in life. He went to the best schools. He went to the best colleges. He got the best education. We don't know what grades he got because he sealed those documents. We don't know how he paid for that education. But yet he says that it could have been him, and he still has to watch himself when he goes on the street. Now, some opportunists said themselves, like Jesse Jackson, they said that when they see a group of black young men, they have to be careful, and they're more worried as if they see a group of white men. I personally do not care. I go through the worst neighborhoods. I go through the white, black neighborhoods, Hispanic neighborhoods. I personally don't care. But Jesse Jackson tends to think it's a problem. Now, to bring up one more issue before Mike shines on this, I will give you something from one of the books that your dear friend wrote. And he said, I chose my friends carefully. More politically active black students, foreign students, the Chicanos, the Marxist professors, and structural feminists, punk rock performance poets. Now, that was Barack Obama writing in his book, Dreams from My Father. So now you tell me, does racism exist in America, and on which side does it exist? On a side where we actually have racism, or people who use it as an opportunity, like you said, it gives a lot of power to the talk show hosts, people like Al Sharpton, who without saying that there is no racism would not have a career. Does racism exist? It does, but not the way they portray it. Zimmerman case, Trayvon Martin case, it's a tragedy. I'm not defending Zimmerman one way or the other, but Zimmerman is not even white. He's a Hispanic. He's a minority himself. This issue was blown up out of proportion, and the reason it was blown up because President injected himself into this issue.
Jake, before I turn to Mike, I'm just going to share with you two anecdotes that popped into my head. I have a very close friend named Ken Rennick. His father was an electrician up in Woodbridge, New Jersey. Ken was a trial lawyer here in Florida. He had a stroke about 15 years ago, but, not a debilitating stroke, but he retired from law. And he has always, and he's not he's a conservative type of guy. But he's not he's not too vociferous on the issues. He keeps his thoughts to himself. But he always has said to people, he said, if you had the choice in the United States to be born black or white, what would you be born as? And, he feels the answer is obvious, that you would be born as a white person because it's harder to be black. That's his take on things, and he doesn't run around talking about race or racism. Number two, right after the Trayvon Martin verdict came back, my partner Stephen Stimson called me, and he asked me a question. You're going to be surprised by this question.
Okay.
And he said to me, Jim, can you think of one neighborhood in the United States, one white neighborhood, predominantly white neighborhood in the United States, where it would be dangerous for a black person to walk down the street? In other words, the person might be killed or assaulted or whatever. And I said to him, Steve, to be honest with you, I can't think of a single predominantly white neighborhood where a black person would have to walk in fear. Okay? And I said to him, conversely, I live in a city, Miami, with a lot of minority people, and I walk some crazy places in Miami, and I also walk with no fear as a white person. I don't. And I also get along with the black people that I meet, that they actually hold the door open for me. I hope that's not a sign that I'm too old. And they call me sir. And I have never had a problem. I've only been in Miami for 9 or 10 months, but I've never had a problem. So that is rather interesting. And number three, I do think that there is racism, which is a lot. I think there's a lot of racism in certain parts of the country. I don't think in New Jersey, New York, other parts of the country. But I will say one thing, that Jesse Jackson, he, I have to believe, has made money off the issue of race. And
Of
I
course,
don't think that he has done anything to improve race relations in the United States. A lot of people dislike or hate Al Sharpton. I think that Al, believe it or not, I think that Al Sharpton has a good heart. I think he fights for what he thinks is justice. I think he fights for black people. But Mr. Jackson, I'm not totally
if
convinced that
let me just say something.
his heart and his soul are committed to
No,
this.
let me just say something. How
Yes.
many times did Al Sharpton speak out on the deaths of young black men, women in Chicago, killed by other blacks? Not once. He only injects himself when it gives him some kind of a leverage and a power. And that's what Al Sharpton is doing. He's an opportunist. He's not. If you think that he believes in it, maybe at some point he did, but he only uses cases like Trayvon Martin, where Zimmerman is not, he's not even a white man, but he uses it as an opportunity to get himself noticed.
Well,
That's what he does.
Jake,
Otherwise, he's insignificant.
it's not just Al Sharpton. People don't talk about all the killings in Chicago. They only talk about the national killings. The one,
Absolutely,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Mike, let me pose the same question to you. Do you think that racism is a problem in the United States? And number two, do you think that it is it's the number one thing that is wrong with the United States of America?
Well, I'll go in order. And first of all, racism is a huge issue in the United States, but I think it's in my view, it's a different view from probably most people's thinking. It's because that we do place labels like minority and African American and Hispanic American and I'm sure Jake has heard Russian American, on an application you have to write down Caucasian American. We're Americans, period. There shouldn't be all these different labels, and I think that puts uh, a big dent in all of this. And if we treated everybody as not the minority, not the majority, but as American people in this great country, a lot of this stuff would go away. But I have to agree on some of this with what Jake said about Al Sharpton as well, is because Al Sharpton was irrelevant until for a few years, until the whole issue with Trayvon Martin came out, and then he's with NBC. He comes out and he interjects himself. The president, like you said, interjected himself and said two comments that were should have never been even made, stating that that could, if Trayvon Martin looked like his son, or if he had a son, would look like his son, or however he worded it. And then later on, he realized that he did that, and trying to, I guess, back out of the conversation. And when he walked in on Jay Carney's press conference, he actually tried to sidestep it, but he made it worse by saying, "Well, it's me." And then when he's been around white folks and other people, and they hold on to their purses and their keys a little tighter, or they turn their car alarm on, or jump in their car, whatever. So making these sparks like this and throwing this stuff out there, I think is a huge issue in America for racism. But the number one, I don't think is racism. I think it's education. And the reason why that is because we educate people to be racist by giving them these titles and giving these people these ideas of what to expect. And, so yes, in Chicago, it's more black on black crime. And, there's a lot of people who can't name any people's names in Chicago. Like Al Sharpton couldn't name anybody. Jesse Jackson couldn't name anybody. But you got to go way back to where Martin Luther King tried to unite everybody. And that's what I'm getting at, is when he came out and he was trying to unite, he had a dream, and, he wanted to unite the right and the left. He was a Republican. He was a conservative. He wanted to unite both sides, of the political parties, and also race. He wanted to just wipe the word color out of vocabulary, African American. And that's why blacks now prefer to be called blacks and whites prefer to be called whites instead of Caucasian American and African American. They want these stigmas and these titles taken away and actually be looked at as equals. And I think that that's a good starting point. And then he was assassinated because there is so much money to be made off of racism and race relations. So our number one issue in America is education, in my belief. And I say that because if you go to Penn State, University of Penn, New York, colleges there, pretty much any college in America, you will probably find a handful of conservative professors. But there's plenty of liberal or extreme or communists or radicals. But when you have the likes of Bill Ayers setting the stage for what a professor should be, that's an issue. That's a problem. So educating people, whether you're white, whether you're black, Hispanic, it doesn't matter, what your culture is, what your ethnicity is. What matters is getting a good education, understanding what America was built off of. And we're all immigrants in the very beginning, but now we're all pushed here and pushed there, and we have to, put certain things down on paper, on applications and things like that.
Well, I want to comment on one thing that you alluded to, which you were just about to talk to, but I want to say it first. I'm the host of the show. When you go to get a voter's registration card and you go to get a driver's license, even when you fill out your property taxes, they have these 6 or 7 boxes: white, African American, Hispanic, non-Hispanic, white but not Hispanic but not white, or it gets a little confusing even.
Off-white.
Yeah, it's I very recently filled out one that had more boxes on it than I had ever seen. And I thought to myself for a second, what the hell am I? Okay, I mean, it had so many categories, I wasn't even sure what I was there for a second. And what do you think, Mike, that does? I mean, I don't see what purpose that serves to begin with. And how do you think that affects the racial divide, if there is such a thing in this country? Those stupid boxes.
Well, all they're trying to do is keep track of which ethnicity is voting in which political party. But if you want to cut down to the mustard of this, it's profiling at its finest. It really is.
That's exactly what I thought.
It's profiling. I mean, you're telling somebody Hispanic, not Hispanic. I mean, when somebody gives me that stuff and they say, "Where are you? What Caucasian, white, Caucasian, Hispanic, half Hispanic, black, whatever." I don't. I go down to other and put American, and they always get mad at me. But I do that. I mean, on purpose, just to let them know that this shouldn't be this huge divide amongst the ranks of people, and there shouldn't be a rank, except for in the military and the police and stuff like that. But you're being profiled politically, so you can write down what your ethnicity is, your nationality is, and so whenever that takes place, now they know how many Hispanics voted for a senator, or how many white people voted for a congressman, or how many whoever that they're trying to look for in their ethnicity, to find out who they're voting for. It's just profiling, data profiling. You have data mining and you have data profiling. To me, this is profiling at its finest. I mean, in New York, you can't even say if the person was black, white. They said the biggest reason why is because people are Muslims and they're trying to get away from that. So you can't say there's a Muslim guy running down the street with a pair of pink Nikes on. Or any of that. You can't say any of that stuff. You can just say the description of the outfit, or it's profiling. So why don't they apply those same rules to all this application stuff, this voter stuff and driver's license stuff, or make it equal across the board on all of it? I mean, because if you go back to it, that's why supposedly the argument is Trayvon Martin was profiled, and he was not profiled in my eyes. I think that it went too far, tragedy on both sides. I think there should have never been, it should never got as far as it did, but it did. And, things happen. So I don't see there's no winner in the case, but there was somebody that lost a son, and that's a tragedy. But at the end of the day, there's no racism in that part of it, but people like to interject it because that'll make them relevant, and then people will be able to remember who they are 20 years from now because of that case. So that's what I think. Education is key, and educating people and understanding what this is all about, and how to get away from the racism and get away from stereotype and get away from the profile, all that stuff. So that's what my take on it all.
Well, let's move.
Can I wait? Can I
Yes.
I just want to add. I actually recently read a few books, which is surprising. But one of the books was that I read literally in less than 4 days, and for me it's fast because I'm not a fast reader. And it was called Gifted Hands. I'm sure both of you are familiar with Dr. Benjamin Carson.
Yes.
And Benjamin Carson, he had a choice. And what makes this man more brilliant than anything in the world? Forget about everything that he did for society, his neurological skills, his brilliant tactics in attacking different surgery, I mean, from outside of the box. But his most important accomplishment is he had a choice. He could have been a victim or he could have been a winner. And he chose to not let the victim mentality penetrate him the way it does in many communities. I'm not talking just black community, but he is a man that truly is an example of what America offers as an opportunity. Here's a kid that came from absolutely the most undesirable consequences, and he was a single parent. His mother worked in several jobs. He had no means. He literally had nothing. And this man truly strived to succeed. And this is the type of mentality they should teach in schools, not just to black kids, but to all the kids. Because if every kid had this mentality, I guarantee you we would have more skilled, more people who are opportunity driven rather than dependency driven.
Yeah, and I like his comment that he says when he does brain surgery, when he pulls their scalp back and he takes the bone off, and when he goes into that brain doesn't have color. It's not black or white. It's a pink flesh color, and that's a person in there. And then and so once you get past the skin, that's a person. And he made that comment, and that hit home for me, and that's why I became a fan of his.
You gotta read his book. You gotta read that book.
I've read it.
I couldn't put it down. It's my favorite book in the world. It's just amazing, inspiring, truly inspiring.
What's the name of that book again?
It's called The Gifted Hands. The Gifted Hands.
One of my closest friends is a brain surgeon.
I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, listen, I mean, this man, what he accomplished, it shows that every child in America can accomplish that with the right mindset. Not necessarily become a brain surgeon. Not everybody has the same skills, the same maybe methods to study, but everybody can have the same opportunity to succeed, to have that mentality from a young age. I think that book should be read in schools. That's honestly my opinion.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, it could happen. When you get into high school, the teachers have the discretion of what to put on your reading list. So away you go. All right. Let's go back to this article. Keep in mind, I did not write this article. Some of the things in here I might agree with, some I might disagree with. And the question posed was, what things are wrong with the United States? Again, taking the position, I think, that these things they're really not asking a question, they're making a statement. These things are wrong with the United States. Number 2 on this list, according to whoever wrote it, is that Americans think they're the only country on the planet. They think they're the only country that counts. They think they're the only country that has ideas. They think they're the only country that can be innovative. And they just think that they're the best. They think that America is the greatest country in the world. And I get a feeling most of the time that when people say we're the greatest country in the world, what they're saying is we're the greatest economic and lifestyle country in the world. We have good roads, and we have refrigerators, and we have plumbing, and we have electricity, and I think that's what they're saying. We're the greatest economic/lifestyle country in the world. I'm not sure that they're always talking about values or culture or things like that. but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. So, Jake, I say to you, and you're from Ukraine. You're
Hmm.
here in the United States. You love the United States. I know that.
Love
And
it.
I know that you're not too crazy about the old USSR, that's for sure. And capitalism you like, and communism I would say you probably hate. I don't know, maybe,
I do hate.
yes. Okay, so I ask you this question. Do Americans, generally speaking, think that they are the only country that counts?
Well, it's not your statement, so it's an ignorant statement to say that every American thinks that we're the only country in the world. But it's good, it's great to be proud of your country. I mean, see, there is nothing wrong with pride. We should have pride. I mean, people that blame America for every evil in the world should be ashamed of themselves, because this is a country that raised a lot of people from poverty to being rich, from rich to being poor, to back to being rich. So it's choice. The choice is yours. You can control your destiny. And a lot of people try to equalize that by saying that the government or somebody else should be able to make decisions who's going to be rich, who's going to be poor, everybody should be equal, when in reality this is the only country in the world that allows people to rise up, succeed, and sometimes they fail, but they try again, and they're not afraid to try again. See, a lot of countries in the world, people run to America. It's usually not the other way around most of the time. So now you tell me, if we think we're the only country in the world, and that's not true, we just think we're a great country. Now, why do people run here and not the other way around? Why immigration in 99.9% happens one way and not in reverse? So, I mean, yes, we are a great country. We're the greatest country because I'm very patriotic about America. And yes, I agree there is the rest of the world, and I'm sure their countries are good and they like them, and God bless them. But I love where I am. And if you don't like America, there's plenty of choices to go and live somewhere else.
Well, Jake, I think you would have to agree with me that the average Russian person in general is proud of Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff and Shostakovich and Anna Akhmatova and Nikolai Gogol and Alexander Pushkin
Hmm.
and many people
Listen,
who have been involved with their artistic and literary culture, their education. Mike talked a little bit about education may be the number one problem. I think Russians are rather proud of their education system. I think Russians think they're smart.
listen.
And I think Russians think they're well educated. I think that quite a few of them speak a number of different languages. I think a lot of them were educated in science and mathematics. And
Yes.
I think that you would have to admit to me that even though Russians may be very disappointed sometimes with the way their country is, or the direction they're going, or the communism, or the USSR, and all this other stuff, that they are proud of some of the things that have happened in Russia. Would you agree with me?
Oh no, absolutely. Listen, Jim, you're absolutely right. Russian culture is full of great art, great music, talented people. Look at where most of the chess players come from.
Yeah,
Look where a lot of scientists come from. I
yeah.
mean, but that has nothing. See, the problem is you have smart people. You have people that drive to succeed when there is no success available. Now, of course, Russia is a little more open. You're allowed to do a little business, a little free market here and there. But when Russia was a Soviet Union, and when you were literally not congratulated or even rewarded for your success, and sometimes even punished for your success, people truly amazed you how great and talented and smart some people were. Yes, education was good, but the point is, some people strive to succeed when there is no success available. That's people's choice, and that's people's spirit. It has nothing to do with the society in itself. And yes, I appreciate Russian culture. I just couldn't understand the government and society that it created.
Well, I see what you're saying. Mike, do you think that a problem exists in the United States in that Americans think that we're the only country in the world that matters.
Well, I'll have to go back to some Greek mythology. There was this boy that was looking at his reflection in the water. His name was Narcium, and as he stared at the water over the couple of weeks, he kept staring at his reflection. And once he realized his reflection was not a different person, but it was himself, he died of depression because he realized he could never love anybody except himself, and that's where the word narcissist comes from. Um, that being said, we have a lot of narcissistic people in America, a lot of people that are selfish, but I don't think that people think that we are the only country on the planet, and that's a huge problem. I think that there's a lot of outlets like media that projects. We have lots of movies, but if we were so great, then why do we send everything that we invent or build off to a different country to be made, to be brought back? If we wanted to be thought we were the best people on the planet, we would be doing all that ourselves. But we almost think we're too good of a country to get our hands dirty, so we send it, products off to a sweatshop to get built for, pennies on the dollar, and get brought back to us to get a product that's built pretty well. I mean, look at the iPhones we talk on, look at the droids we talk on and things like that. They weren't made in America. They're American-based company, but that's not where they are made.
Well, what does that say about America? What's the moral of your story? What's the moral there?
The moral of my story is that people that have the platforms don't give a good message. The article says they think they are the only country on the planet, and what I'm saying is that the people with platforms that have the ability to reach out and do things like Bill Gates is doing right now, like trying to go to Africa and get cures for malaria and all these other things. We don't see past our nose. What we do see is what's happening in America. So we don't judge another country. Therefore, we think that our country is the only country that exists because that's all we hear about. We don't hear about anything else. So I think that the moral of the story is that there are countries out there that are as good as ours, but we don't give them enough credit.
Okay. Under this article, they say that the number 3 thing which creates problems in America, what's wrong in America, is violence. Let me set the stage there a little bit. Jake talked about the killing of black people in a place like Chicago, which undoubtedly, admittedly, happens every day on a rather large number. Maybe 10 people a day die from black-on-black gun violence, maybe 20. I don't know. That's a problem. But I do want to tell you one other thing. 90% or more, and you know this, Mike, of the serial killers in America have been white. They haven't been black. Mm-hmm. And the people that have shot up these schools and everything, I think, in fact, the schools have been 100% white almost. Maybe one black guy down here in West Palm Beach killed a teacher. But for the most part, they've been white. Next, we have had this gun issue, and it is rather baffling why we can't have a law that tries, I don't think it's completely possible, or maybe not even possible at all, to keep guns out of the hands of mentally ill people and people who have been convicted of a felony. I can't see what's particularly wrong with that, and I don't know if it would work anyway and how you would do it. And I'll bet you I could walk out on Biscayne Boulevard tonight and buy a gun. I don't think I'd have any problems with that. And obviously nobody'd be screening me out there. They just want to know how much money I could give them. And violence in places like New York City over the last 20 years has gone down. I mean, the statistics really bear that out. There are a lot less murders in New York City than there were in the 80s, 70s, and 60s for some reason or other. And you've had a lot of, people talk about immigrants. Some of them don't like immigrants. You've had a lot of immigrants come to New York City of all colors. brown, black, white, and yet the violent crimes seem to have gone down. So, what do you think, Jake? Do you think that we are known through, and in comparison to a country like Sweden, we are pretty violent. I mean, nobody can dispute that. I mean, that's on a per capita basis, a
Yes, per
proportional
capita
basis.
basis,
Yeah.
of course.
And
Well,
you know, in England, maybe they don't now, but the police didn't used to carry guns and things like that. And you know, they've had violence over there too. But there are many countries in the world which are less violent than the United States. I mean, we all know that. I think Russia has a lot of violence, I'll tell you that.
absolutely.
Do you think that violence is just a rampant problem here in the United States?
Well, no, it's not just United States. Let's put that aside. And as you said, per capita, they actually did independent study. I saw independent reports where England actually has higher per capita crime after they got rid of legalized guns, after they took guns away from people. Australia, their gun crimes went down, but every other crime went up after they got rid of guns. So, I mean, to say that the guns cause violence, I mean, we have Hollywood, we have movies that are called A Bullet to the Head, and then Sylvester Stallone gets on TV and says that I'm against guns when he names a movie Bullet to the Head. I mean, violence exists not because of guns or because of you know certain intangible items. It's a moral. It's a culture that creates violence within certain communities, within certain portions of the country, in every country. I'll give you an example. I might have told you before, I might have not. In Russia, there was no guns in the legalized guns in the hands of the citizens in Soviet Union. People, some criminals used to get their guns because they used to kill a cop, not because they wanted to kill a cop, but they wanted to get a gun just in case they needed one. So the culture created different type of a crime to be able to get a gun. Now in Mexico, they have the strictest gun laws probably in the world. But where do cartels get guns? Straight from the military. Where does the military get guns? They buy it legally on the market, and then they sell it straight to cartels. So when there is a corruption, when there is illegal activity, people will find a way to do violent crimes, whether you create strictest laws or not. But in America, we have one thing that works for the legal and law-abiding citizens. You're allowed to protect yourself if you choose to. This is your Second Amendment right. And also, America has been safe from other countries through history because Americans have guns. Japan actually was going to attack us after Pearl Harbor, and their general made a statement. I would not attack America because in every bush and in every piece of grass, there will be an American hiding with a gun.
Okay. Let me ask you one big question, Jake. It came out and the gun debate has died. I would say that the NRA again won that battle because it's not on the table anymore. And one of their main arguments became the last month or so of the, I don't know, when this issue was being debated, was that guns were needed by Americans to protect themselves from the United States government. What do you think of that idea?
Well, look, I mean, how do we know? And I'm playing the devil's advocate because Second Amendment doesn't say what do you want or what you don't want. It gives you a right. Constitution limits the government. It doesn't give you a right as a citizen. It limits the government. Now, if the government, let's say, becomes rogue at some point, and not to say that it will, but through history, we have seen many governments go rogue, like in Nazi Germany. And I'm not comparing, but remember in Nazi Germany, Jews that gave up their guns, they died. Jews that didn't give up their guns, most of them survived. That's an example through history. Now, Americans have a right to have a gun and keep it to protect their property and themselves and their family. Now, who's to say that that right should be infringed upon them because this is a human right to protect what's yours.
All right.
And
Mike?
I'm sorry. NRA is only people. It became even bigger when they started putting pressure on them because it's people. I'm part of NRA because it's just people that want to support Second Amendment and our right to protect ourselves. That's all it is.
All right. You can interpret the Second Amendment in any way you want. And of course, the United States Supreme Court has spoken on it. And I don't think it was a 5-4 decision. I think it was, a larger majority.
Yeah, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Did you ever see those gun-free zone signs? I call them not protection. I call them invitations.
Okay. All right. I understand what you're saying. I'm still not sure about mentally ill and crazy people running
No,
around with guns.
oh
But
no, that I agree with you. I mean, we do background checks. When I had to go for my permit, and then I had to go purchase a weapon, at every step they check me. They check me through FBI, fingerprint, and this, that. I mean, yes, mentally disturbed people who have mental history should never get a gun. That goes without saying. But they do a lot of background checks already. They just don't enforce the laws they
yeah,
already
but
have.
Jake, that one of the reasons for that is because you're in New Jersey, which has tougher gun laws.
Yeah, but Second Amendment, I'm sorry, NRA actually wanted to donate millions of dollars to enforce and centralize the mental background check. And nobody took them up on their offer because it's easier to talk and politicize than to actually fix a problem.
Don't forget one thing, gentlemen. Under the United States Supreme Court case saying that people in the United States have the right to bear arms, there's also a paragraph in there or a footnote or something that says states do have the right to control the sale of guns to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public.
And
Meaning that, yes, a state can pass a law to keep guns out of the hands of the mentally insane and people who have committed violent felonies. They can do that.
Jim,
People don't realize that states are still free to do that. The thing that
yes,
has happened is some states have chosen not to do that.
Jim, let me just intervene and then I'll let Mike speak. I apologize.
Sure.
But did you notice that the states that have the strictest gun laws have the most crime? And it goes without saying that people, mentally challenged people, criminals, they will find a way to commit a crime with or without a gun. Look at Chicago, Illinois. Look at Washington, D.C. Look at Connecticut. I mean, Connecticut has crimes like we saw in the news. That was terrible. I mean, because there was a gun-free zone sign. I mean, look at Texas. Texas has almost no crime. I mean, doesn't it say something about gun laws?
It is strange.
It's not strange. It's obvious.
It is paradoxical. I'm not sure that anyone has an exact answer for that, but what you say has been all over the news and the statistics. Yes,
Jim, if you have a suspicion to believe that you will go to one house and it has a gun and another house doesn't, which one would you choose to burglarize?
Yeah.
That's all it is. So if you know in Chicago, most of the people don't have guns and legal citizens don't have guns, you have people running around and of course they don't need a gun to victimize others.
Well, I'm not a sociologist. You could be 100% right. I just don't know, but the facts seem to bear out what you're saying. Mike, under this article, the fourth biggest problem making America not the greatest country in the world. And you say, of course, that the biggest problem in this country is education. So maybe this person that wrote this article should move violence down to number 5. And I certainly think that education probably is either number 1 or number 2. Do you think that violence is dragging this country down?
I think that there's a part of violence in this world that does exist. Jake actually took some of the words out of my mouth. Is if you look at Florida, for instance, where you and I live, that in the early 90s, the violence rate was pretty high. Then over the past 2 decades, tens of thousands of concealed carry permits were issued, and the violence went down substantially. I mean, we're talking a huge amount. It went way down. And then you look at Chicago with the most strictest gun laws, and you see the most violence in the entire country in that one city. So you take that aspect of it and say, okay, so violence does play a big part of it. Also, you're not going to hear the news talk about how Walmart sold 50,000 teddy bears this week. They're going to talk about violence. They're going to talk about who killed who and what neighborhood and what did what and why. But there's also other ways to kill people. You brought up the Second Amendment and the gun issue about, people were talking about it. People have guns to protect themselves from the government. But what people don't realize is that's exactly why the Second Amendment was written, is to keep basically a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, meaning that if a government tries to infringe on your rights, any right, and they try to take that away from you, and you have that right available to you, you are allowed to protect yourselves against, basically tyranny. That's what it, so if you have a tyrannical government coming in and trying to take your rights away, kicking down a no-knock warrant, kicking down your doors, went up 3,000% since the 1970s. And there is probably, I'd say, I think there's like 4 huge cases that I know of right now off the top of my head that they mistakenly went into the wrong house. Somebody was either shot and killed. They even went into a mayor's house and didn't know who he was. And they had the mayor hogtied on the ground. His wife was tied up. Another one was in Arizona where the Marine got shot 60 times. And they tried to say that he fired the first shot, and the investigation came out that he never even took his gun off safety. Another one was in Arizona as well, in Maricopa County, where there was a young 2-year-old girl with a princess blanket over her, laying on the couch. They kicked down the door, and she stood up, and it was an accidental discharge, but she was killed. The father was slammed down in her blood. This is actual factual information. If you look it up, slammed down her blood and arrested. And then they realized that the suspect was two stories up. But every single one of those cases was a wrong no-knock warrant. Probable cause was there for a different address, but in the same vicinity. So that's the type of things that people don't realize, is that, the government and police in the state don't always make the right decisions. I'm not saying that you should unload on them if you have a firearm, but I am saying that you have a right to defend yourself against a tyrannical government. But going back on that, the state has immunity against this stuff. So if you try to sue them, well, but if you were to do the opposite to a police officer or a government agent, you would be fried.
Well, limited immunity, $100,000 in Florida for each person that was damaged.
Yeah, but that's compared to somebody's life, come on, there's no comparison. But my point is, violence does play a role. I think it's at the top of the list, not the very top, but it's close to the top of the list because of the type of, we have a government that's overwhelmingly losing its role in society. It works for we the people. That's why the Constitution says we the people, and they should come to us with a very high standard of worth when they talk to us and speak to us. But yet they're treating us like the mouse and they are the cat, and it should be the other way around, because we the people are far a greater population than the people that are in power. And that's the problem, is the people that are in power, they can pretty much, rule the roost. Look at the people trying to get elected right now, after they've, in New York, when they are sending, perverted pictures around, and they're actually getting a shot in the mayoral race. You know who we're talking about. But so violence does play a role. And what I'm saying is, the more that society accepts this, the worse it's going to get. Education, back to education. So we need to put the education at the forefront and teach people that you don't go shoot up your government, you don't go shoot up your schools, you don't go shoot up, all these people. you do recognize there's mental illness out there. You deal with it, but you don't deal with it by taking law-abiding citizens and taking a bunch of rules that will only apply to them. Because, like you just said, you could go down Biscayne Bay. You're not a criminal, but you can go down Biscayne Bay and go into a dark alley, pull out a couple $100, get you a firearm with a serial number probably filed off, and you're on your way. Do you think that a law-abiding citizen is going to do the same thing, such as yourself? You wouldn't really do that, but do you think so? Now you have all these laws surrounding the people that are actually law-abiding citizens that vote and do the right thing, and then you have a criminal. So you're taking the actual ability to defend yourself away from people that are doing it the right way, and the people that are doing it the wrong way don't care. So violence is an issue. So they should be targeting the people that are criminals and the people that have the issues and the mental illness. Those people should be looked at and scrutinized, not the people that make sure that government can still perform their duties and have people call, Crime Stopper hotlines when I see a criminal do something. Because the more the government gets involved and takes away the Americans' rights, the less the Americans going to be involved to help the government. So violence is an issue. I think we should deal with it on a professional level. I think we should deal with it on a law-abiding level, and I think we, the people, should have the last word in it, because we, the people, are the one that elects these officials in the office, and then they scrutinize law-abiding citizens by trying to make more laws around them, and it just doesn't make sense.
Someday we'll have to do a show.
Can I add to what Mike said real quick?
Yes, sure.
Basically, Mike is right. It's education, it's a culture, it's morals that are being slipped away. I mean, we have a lot of young youth who do not respect their parents. They run around, they join a gang, they join some kind of other problematic group, and they try to make a life for themselves different outside of the actual law. And what anti-gun talks have done, it's like saying that you have a drunk driver, but you're gonna punish everybody who never drank and drove. It's you take a criminal or mentally insane, and then you say, let's make gun laws stricter or take guns away from the people who have never done anything ever in their life. So basically, you're punishing the people who are actually living by the law.
All right. This is the last topic that we're going to discuss tonight because we're almost out of time. In this article from the internet, which we're all working off of, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong or anything. All it does is throw out ideas, and ideas I think are always good. This writer says that the fourth worst problem dragging down the United States is the current economy, and this article's written in sort of a crazy way. And the first sentence is, they need to stop the welfare state. If you do not work, you do not eat. Okay? And they say that people who don't work are eating up the economy. And they say the next part of the economy is that the government is planning to take over. I don't know what he means by that. But at any rate, let's go with what this person says, that the welfare state, as he thinks that we have a welfare state, maybe we do, maybe we don't, is dragging down the United States of America. What do you say about that, Jake?
Well, he's absolutely right about that, and I'm not blaming just this current administration. We've been going down the hill for a while, but I'll bring up something interesting into this. You probably heard of Clovert and Piven strategy. And Clovert
No, I haven't. No.
You haven't. Okay, so I'll introduce you to it, and then maybe you can look it up, and we can do another show just on that.
That's a long discussion.
It's a long discussion. I'm going to give you a quick, just to relate to what you said. Clovert and Piven had a lot of points how to bring down capitalism and create communism. But one of their points was very specific. You expand. You don't help the needy people. See, when me and you talk and you say, well, what about the people that need the help? Of course, sick and elderly people always going to be helped by society. But what Clovert and Piven said, let's expand the dependency, meaning you actually encourage and you make people feel like they're getting something for free all the time without realizing that they're losing their freedoms. And I'm actually reading another book right now. It's called Anatomy of Bolshevik. And in this book, this Russian writer who actually has experience and education in communism, he says that his cats is perfect example of welfare and how expanded dependency eventually makes people lose desire to go and hunt. One time, Jim, you brought up to me, I bet you that most people, given a choice between having a job, a decent job, or dependency, will choose a job. Well, when a person has been drilled over and over through generation to generation that dependency on government can help you live, eventually you lose the desire to hunt. And that's where the problem exists. We're creating a dependency state, and Clover and Piven actually achieved what they wanted. They said you have to expand your dependency, and then the people will vote for the same government, even though they don't realize how much it's hurting them.
Okay, Mike, what do you say? Do we have a welfare state? And is the current economy, if it is a welfare state, is it dragging down the United States?
Well, I have two different sides of this. I think there's people born to addiction that no fault of their own. There's people born on disabilities, no fault of their own, things like that, who do need help. I mean, so the person that's speaking here, you don't work, you don't eat, then maybe they need to go back to that if you don't get your education and you can't write. So my point is that the whole issue here is that we are not in a 100% welfare state, but we are in the most welfare we've ever been in the entire history of America. So that part does have some meaning, but there are exceptions to the rule of this, and which are people that have no fault of their own, and they are born into dependency. Their mother or father were addicted to a drug. They were born. They need hospital. They'll never be right for the rest of their lives, and they'll need some kind of dependency on the government to get them through. So I think that's the part that is bringing down the economy. Is a whole different story when people just choose not to work and they have the abilities to work and they're just too lazy. But people with disabilities have the ability to, if they paid into the system for a number of years and they get hurt on the job, that's another exception. But for the most part, the rest of it should be a little bit more scrutinized.
Okay. Well, in states like Florida, they have cut back quite significantly on unemployment benefits. They have cut back on welfare. And as you know, you may not love him, but William Jefferson Clinton probably made the biggest cutback in welfare since the New Deal. I mean, that's kind of factual.
I actually agreed with Clinton. What Clinton did, we should have kept. Clinton made a great welfare reform. It was actually a reform. It was not a change. It was not a promise. It was a reform. And that's why Clinton gets such a great popularity in this country still.
Okay.
Yeah, but Social Security, we're borrowing money from Social Security to pay for Obamacare, which is you can't do all that. You can't take this money and go in 100 different directions and expect.
Mike, we have been borrowing from Social Security for
I
know,
dependent with aid to families with dependent children and disabled people, and I forget many programs have been funded by the Social Security Trust Fund. This just didn't happen with the Obama health care.
Well, but my point is that we don't have enough. We can't keep going back into it. That's what I covered just a minute ago. Is there are exceptions to the rule for disability people that can't help that. But Obamacare, they specifically said they're going into this trust fund to roll out nationalized health care.
Mike, it's easy for politicians. They don't have to raise income taxes. They take it out of this fund. They may raise Social Security taxes, but they don't have to raise income tax.
What upsets me, sorry guys, what upsets me about Social Security is when it was created, it was a promise that you're going to pay into something that you're going to get. Now they're trying to say, well, let's raise the age of the retirees so we don't have to pay them as much. Or, wait a second, we don't have enough because we have more people now going into retirement than paid into it. This is your money, and they're saying this is their bank account, they borrowed against it, and now there's not enough in there?
Well,
I mean,
Jake,
what kind of program is that to
Jake,
begin with?
I think a lot of people on both sides of the political spectrum agree with you on that. Guys, I want to thank you for coming on the show tonight. I thank you very much for giving me a lot of insight and great ideas. And I want to say to all of our listeners around the world, good night.
i-netradio.com. i-netradio.com.
Built like a rock to stand.